The last word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, we have important new MS Now reporting tonight about the people who Donald Trump pardoned for their crimes on January 6th, including attacks on police officers, who have been charged with other crimes since then. Ken Dilanian has done this work. He's going to bring that report to us this hour. Really important stuff.
Yeah, really important. Ken Dilanian, Carol, they've been doing incredible work. I'll look forward to hearing what they have to say.
Thanks. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Well, Donald Trump helped push the stock market off a cliff today when he said the stupidest thing ever said by an American politician about inflation. Donald Trump said, and I know you've heard this by now, quote, "I love the inflation," end quote. No other president has ever allowed the word love to appear in the same sentence with the word inflation. It happened in the Oval Office, where Donald Trump puts on a personal demonstration of Trump derangement syndrome every time he speaks. His job in front of the reporters in the Oval Office today was simply to sign a bill funding the Department of Homeland Security. That's a routine thing for any other president, barely worth public attention. But Donald Trump tried to turn it into a show as usual. But with his derangement on full display, he actually spent more time talking about the reflecting pool on the Washington Mall in detail than the legislation he was supposed to sign. And while he was at it, he, of course, lied about the reflecting pool, claiming it's twice the height of the Empire State Building, which it is not, and also saying it's longer than the height of any building in the world, which is also untrue. That was Donald Trump proving, as he does every day, that he does not know how to speak about anything, and I mean anything, without lying. Why would he lie about the reflecting pool, the size of the reflecting pool? It was the least important lie Donald Trump told today, but diagnostically, it might be one of the most important because it shows how completely uncontrollable Donald Trump's deranged lying is. There is no issue too small for Donald Trump to lie about. None. No president has ever devoted more public attention to less important things than Donald Trump does every day, including every day of his war, and very much including the reflecting pool. And when reporters finally got a chance to ask questions, and one of them asked about the terrible inflation number that came out this morning, showing the highest inflation rate of Donald Trump's presidency, Donald Trump's first lie was to say, "I love it." Those are his exact first words. "I love it." His second lie was the numbers were glitched. Donald Trump trying to tell you that every number the government issues is wrong, whether it's a vote count in Los Angeles or an inflation number that he doesn't like. But he instantly abandoned his lie about the inflation number was glitched, whatever that was supposed to mean. And then he said these exact words. "You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why?" And then he rambled about his war in Iran, and he actually never answered the question about why he loves inflation.
Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning, could that be a headwind?
No, I love it. The numbers were great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? Because as soon as this war is over, you know, I can say it now. Something you didn't know. Do you know we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil? Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. We took out the other night 22 ships. Late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it.
And then he just kept going, and he completely forgot about the lie that he suggested he was going to answer, the "I love the inflation. You know why?" He forgot to answer the why question that he asked of himself. This is the sleazy real estate salesman's pitch at work. This is Donald Trump trying to sell an apartment in the 1980s, and the potential buyer looks out the window and sees nothing but the brick wall of the building next door, and Donald Trump says, "I love that there's no view." And then he goes on to tell the buyer about how much better it is for sleeping, that you'll never have any direct sunlight in this apartment, waking you up all the time. The lying salesman junk that desperate, fast-talking liars like Donald Trump traffic in so nervously as he did today. Donald Trump saying today he loves inflation. He loves every price going up. He likes everything being more expensive. He loves that. He wants everything to be more expensive for everyone out there who voted for him to make everything less expensive. The stock market was already having a bad day. And then when Donald Trump said, "I love inflation," the stock market got much worse. 79-year-old Donald Trump, who is days away from being 80-year-old Donald Trump, gets lost in his own lies now, much more than he used to. And so when he says, "I love the inflation," and then asks, you know why, he forgets the why. And so Republicans running for re-election are left with the burden of Donald Trump saying, "I love inflation." And Democrats can show Donald Trump saying that on video in as many campaign commercials as they want. In a tense meeting in the Situation Room, where the White House can monitor every potential hotspot in the world, the Vice President of the United States said, "This is a huge problem." It is the same Situation Room that has faced huge problems before, just as President John F. Kennedy did, facing down the Cuban Missile Crisis in the Situation Room in 1962, when the world came the closest it ever has to nuclear war. And that's what ranks as a huge problem in the Situation Room. The same place where Vice President Joe Biden sat with President Obama and other national security officials watching the successful mission President Obama authorized to apprehend or kill Osama bin Laden. But in Donald Trump's White House, the Situation Room has been disgracefully degraded to the place where they discuss the Epstein files. The scene is delivered in remarkable reporting, including over 1,000 interviews of people close to Donald Trump by New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, in an excerpt of their forthcoming book, printed in the New York Times today under the headline, "Inside the White House Freakout Over the Epstein Files." The title of their book, that will be published in 2 weeks, is "Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump." It can be pre-ordered online now, as I have already done. When reached for comment, the White House did not respond to any specific details in the New York Times report. The Situation Room meeting described in the book happened 11 months ago, just 11 months ago, on July 17th of last summer. Vice President James David Vance was the highest-ranking official in the Situation Room. Donald Trump's chief of staff was there, his White House counsel, his press secretary, along with his trusted Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who is also his former criminal defense lawyer. Attorney General Pamela Bondi and FBI Director Kashyap Patel joined the discussion by speakerphone. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, in their reporting in the New York Times today, write, "The vice president appeared panicked to others in the room about the way the subject of Epstein was already dividing the MAGA coalition. He was privately pressing for the administration to release all the Epstein files. Vance had also floated to colleagues an extraordinary PR gambit that the White House enlist Tucker Carlson to interview Epstein's longtime girlfriend and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison. It might help the president if Maxwell was willing to state that Trump had not been part of any wrongdoing with Epstein." Vance told the group that he believed all the files should be released as soon as possible. He argued that Congress was going to force the release of the Epstein files eventually. When the White House counsel, David Warrington, said Ghislaine Maxwell could be given a pardon or have her sentence reduced, there were objections, not because it was the wrong thing to do, but because it, quote, would create a huge PR problem. So we now have detailed descriptions of discussions in the White House that mirror what we suspected they were doing in the White House a year ago. We speculated on this program a year ago about exactly what they were doing there, about the possibility of Donald Trump wanting to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell in exchange for Ghislaine Maxwell saying she never saw Donald Trump do anything wrong. In that meeting, in the Situation Room, Todd Blanche came up with the idea of asking federal judges in Florida and New York to unseal grand jury testimony in the Epstein-related cases, which everyone agreed was a good idea, especially when Todd Blanche predicted that the judges would refuse to release the grand jury transcripts. The Times reports, if the courts refused to unseal them, as Blanche predicted, they could shift the blame for withholding the Epstein material away from the Trump administration and onto the judges, and all the better. If the judges had been appointed by Democratic presidents, Blanche's suggestion would make it appear that the White House wanted the materials released when it was almost certain not to happen. Todd Blanche's alternative to J.D. Vance's idea about having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell was for Todd Blanche himself to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, which is exactly what Todd Blanche then did. There is a dramatic account in the book excerpt of the Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, clashing with the Attorney General Bondi and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Bongino showed up to a daily Justice Department meeting with the FBI staff and the Attorney General. He was in a volcanic mood. As soon as he entered the room, he erupted at Bondi, shouting at her, "You effed this thing up from the start." Bongino yelled, "The way you've been talking about this, that dumb effing charade with the Epstein files, the they're on my desk nonsense, all the promises to the folks out there." Patel and Bongino both subsequently told a White House official that Bondi needed to resign. 2 days later, on July 9th, the two men were summoned to a meeting with Wiles and Bondi in the Situation Room complex. They were the last to enter the small wood-paneled room. Seated around the table were Bondi, Wiles, Blanche, and Taylor Budowich, who one of Wiles' deputies. The moment Bongino sat down, Wiles told him that she had been informed he leaked a sensitive story about Epstein and Trump to ABC News. "I'll tell you what," Bongino replied, "I'll give you $100,000 cash right now. I'm not kidding. Walk out to West Exec, put that reporter on speaker, and get him to admit I leaked it. $100,000. Bongino's aggressive response to Wiles startled the others. She was the White House Chief of Staff, essentially a stand-in for the president. Wiles put Bongino on the spot. Going forward, she said, "We're all in. We're all going to agree to move forward. Are you in or not?" "No, I'm not," Bongino said. "This is not my plan. I'm not part of this going forward. Forget it. I'm out of here." He stormed out of the Situation Room, and he eventually resigned his position at the FBI. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan report the relationships at the top of the Justice Department were by now beyond dysfunctional. At another July meeting in Wiles' office, Bongino and Patel told the chief of staff they suspected that Bondi had leaked negative stories about them. "Blondie effed this whole thing up," Bongino later told a confidant. "She was the one on TV saying over and over they had all this stuff. There was never anything. We were always clear about that. But now everyone thinks we did something wrong, and I gave up everything." Bongino complained that he had given up his high-rated show and millions of dollars, and now it's all disappeared because people think we screwed something up with Epstein. Bongino paused. This is going to be Donald Trump's Iran-Contra. The book includes Donald Trump's reaction to his supporters turning against him on the Epstein files. Trump told aides he was very unhappy with some of his most influential supporters, including Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, all of whom were publicly urging the administration to come clean. Kirk had held a Turning Point USA event the previous day that turned into an Epstein grievance fest, with one speaker after another bashing Bondi over her handling of the situation. Trump had called Kirk and scolded him. The book excerpt that appears in the New York Times ends this way. The Epstein crisis had exposed something that some of Trump's closest advisors spent months refusing to see. The president could break institutions redirect the federal government against his enemies, and bring the world's richest men into the Oval Office bearing tribute. But he could not, it turned out, make Jeffrey Epstein disappear. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and the Armed Services Committee. Congressman Khanna, this is a fascinating account inside the White House at a time when we together on this program were considering the possibilities that they were obviously considering, like pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell.
Lawrence, it's really a bombshell report. I mean, you have the president's attorney general sitting there in the Situation Room talking about covering up on the Epstein files, talking about whether they're going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, talking about how to deceive the American public to protect Donald Trump. I had no idea, actually, about the lengths that Vance and Bondi and Blanche and Susie Wiles were going to cover all of this up.
And now we see J.D. Vance in those meetings early on saying, you really just have to release everything. He seems to be the one who was able to see what was coming.
Lawrence, look, I've known J.D. Vance before he became a Trump minion, and Vance had initially some populist instincts. He was initially against wars. He was initially talking about bringing manufacturing home, and he understood the Epstein issue. He understood that they needed to be released. What is sad is that he totally compromised his ideology. He's there, and he could have said anytime, release these files. He could have gone to Donald Trump and said, release these files. Instead, he becomes part of the orchestration of a cover-up, and it's really a tragedy. It's anything Donald Trump touches turns bad, and the same thing has happened to J.D. Vance.
And we have confirmation in this reporting of another thing that we saw as it was happening, which was the Todd Blanche move to ask judges to release grand jury transcripts. We said in our coverage here that he's doing that because he thinks they won't release the transcripts. And then he also knows there's nothing in the transcripts that actually adds to anyone's understanding of the case. It was as completely cynical as we described it when they were doing it.
Absolutely, Lawrence. I mean, you have been on top of all this, and it's worth reminding your viewers that you didn't just report the news, you made the news, because, of course, it was your interview with the lawyer Bradley Edwards down in Florida that leads to us subpoenaing the Epstein estate, that leads to all of the interviews, including Bill Gates that we're doing today, and that connect us to the survivors that lead to the Epstein Transparency Act taking place. But it was so cynical of Blanche, because at any time, Blanche or Bondi could have come to Congress. They could have said, we need Congress's authorization to release the files. In fact, you hear that's what Vance is saying, release them or go to Congress to ask to release them. But they fought tooth and nail. And now you have Massey, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, three of the Republicans who signed the discharge petition, their political careers ruined. They did that. They destroyed careers. They fought us every step of the way. We passed it in spite of it, but they were acting in a totally disingenuous way. And the main thing here of this report is they know this is a political bombshell. The focus groups show that this is the biggest vulnerability for Donald Trump.
So Bondi told your committee that Todd Blanche was the one who was in charge of all of the Epstein files activity, releasing, not releasing, redacting, not redacting. This reporting seems to basically confirm that. And today, the Republican chairman of your committee said that he now wants to hear from Todd Blanche. Let's listen to what he said.
I'm communicating with the Department of Justice. I would like for Todd Blanche to come in July, but I've always wanted Blanche to come in. The main thing that we have for Blanche is the question on, what, if any, documents are left out.
Did this reporting today by the New York Times and in this forthcoming book increase the pressure on the chairman to get Todd Blanche in there?
Absolutely. Look, the chairman is always a dollar short and a day late, but I'm glad he's come around. Blanche needs to come, and he needs to answer two simple questions. First, why are all of the F-302 forms, the forms where the survivors are telling about other men who raped or abused them, why are they still unreleased or fully redacted? When are they going to release those 3 million files that name names? And second, Melania Trump has said that Epstein didn't act alone. Why is there no investigation or prosecution into people like Les Wexner and Leon Black and others? Why are they not prosecuting? And he owes us an answer, but he owes the American people an answer.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Appreciate it.
Coming up, Donald Trump went from saying we are 2 or 3 days away from a peace deal with Iran to now saying we are, quote, blasting the crap, that was his words, out of Iran. Retired Admiral John Kirby will join us next. On the 103rd day of Donald Trump's war in Iran, he said this about the Strait of Hormuz.
You know, we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil. Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. We took out the other night 22 ships, late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it. We're taking out millions, which I'm just announcing today for the first time. But we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil, millions of barrels. Every night we took out oil.
At 5:36 p.m. Eastern Time today, U.S. Central Command posted this on social media. U.S. Central Command forces began launching additional self-defense strikes today at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time against multiple targets in Iran. At the Commander-in-Chief's direction, these strikes are in response to Iran's unwarranted and continued aggression. Joining us now is retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral and former White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby. He's now the director of the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics and an MS Now National Security Analyst. Admiral Kirby, what can you make sense of what Donald Trump was talking about there on the 22 ships that he claims went through the strait the other night just because it was dark and they turned off the lights or something?
So do you remember a few weeks ago he announced this Project Freedom where we were going to be ushering ships in and out, not escorting them, but getting them through the strait. Then that caused, because he announced it, the Iranians reacted badly. It caused the military to readjust, and they came up with this strategy here of doing it quietly, doing it at night, providing some overwatch and oversight, not escorting them, but doing it in a quiet way. That's what he's referring to. And they've been doing this now, Lawrence, for about a month. So over the last 30 days or so, they've actually gotten about 200 ships out, which is, it's important. It's not insignificant. It's a heck of an effort. I'm not at all surprised that the military's been able to pull this off. I can't imagine, though, that it's all that helpful to them to have it announced today at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. You've already seen, as a matter of fact, just within the hours of the president saying that, the IRGC reacting very strongly publicly about that. And I suspect we'll see them redouble their efforts to try to stymie that traffic flow going forward.
But is it likely that Iran knew about this and was, in effect, letting it happen?
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, the Central Command had acknowledged this effort to reporters over the last few weeks. So it wasn't, they didn't announce it like it was today, but it was publicly known. And my sense is the Iranians were aware of it too. But when you make it an issue like this, when you make it so public, now you force a reaction to them, which is what I think the U.S. military was trying to avoid, an overreaction by the IRGC. And so we'll have to see, how they go about doing that now, how they respond. I think it's also really important to keep these numbers in perspective. And again, I'm not diminishing the effort because it's hard work to do what the military is doing. But 200 ships over the course of a month. Normally in a month, before we started bombing Iran, before this war began 103 days ago, there was 3,000 ships per month going through the strait, about 100 to 135 each and every day. So yes, this is a good move. It's certainly a good development, but it's not going to alleviate the high price of oil. It's not going to alleviate the shortage of oil and natural resources, including fertilizer components coming out of the Persian Gulf, not in any significant way anyway.
What does it contribute to the situation to have a president saying every, I don't know, few days that we are 1, 2, or 3 days away from an end to all of this and a complete peace agreement?
Well, it's hard to know because we're not in the room with him. I don't know if he's being told that by his negotiating team. Maybe he is, and maybe he's reflecting that. But it's difficult to do that to your negotiating team, to continue to put those expectations out. I think the skeptic would say that part of what he's doing here is manipulating the markets, basically talking the markets down. So if you come out with a positive comment every now and then, maybe you can keep the markets from spooking and try to get the oil prices more stabilized. I think that's also what's going on here. But it's not helpful to the negotiating process. It's probably not helpful to the U.S. military, who are trying to keep the temperature down. And I think it's also, unfortunately, giving the American people a false sense of potential security here about what's actually happening.
Admiral John Kirby, thank you very much for your invaluable perspective on all of this.
Great to be with you, Lawrence.
Coming up, MS Now Justice correspondent Ken Dilanian will join us with his important new reporting about the new crimes that some January 6th criminals who Donald Trump pardoned are now charged with. These are new crimes after the Trump pardon. Ken Dilanian joins us with that report next. The nonprofit legal publication Lawfare has reported at least 97 of the nearly 1,600 people who were charged in connection with the Capitol riot have been accused of new crimes since January 6, 2021. MS Now Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian has much more on that in the latest installment of Justice Interrupted.
This is the moment Daniel Rodriguez stuck a taser into the neck of D.C. police officer Michael Fanone during the January 6th attack on the Capitol. When FBI agents later confronted Rodriguez, he wept, seeming to express remorse.
Why did you tase him?
I don't know. I'm a piece of shit. I'm sorry. I don't know. He's a human being with children, and he's not a bad guy. He sounds like he's just doing his job, and I'm an asshole.
But after a judge sentenced him to prison, Fanone believes Rodriguez showed his true colors.
The moment that the judge slams the gavel and the case is closed and nothing can be done, he raises his fist on his way out of the courtroom and screams out that Trump won. Trump won.
Rodriguez was one of 5 people convicted of assaulting Fanone, who rushed to defend the Capitol on January 6th and was dragged into the crowd while fighting to keep rioters out of the building. 4 of Fanone's attackers were released from custody, their convictions cast aside after Donald Trump pardoned them in one of his first acts as president, along with 600 other rioters charged or convicted of assaulting or impeding police officers that day. One of Fanone's assaulters never had to report to prison. Rodriguez was sentenced to 12.5 years. Albuquerque Copperhead got 7.5 years for dragging Fanone into the mob while yelling, "I got one." Kyle Young was sentenced to 7 years, and Louis Wayne Snoots to 6 for helping restrain Fanone during the attack. Thomas Civic was sentenced to just over 4 years, but never served a day for assaulting Fanone and stealing his badge and radio. President Donald Trump's unprecedented use of the clemency power to free fraudsters, drug traffickers, and wealthy donors has sparked outrage.
These are the hostages, approximately 1,500.
But the blanket pardons of violent January 6 felons stand apart. Even some of Trump's biggest backers balked.
Full pardon.
Pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I think was a mistake, because it seems to suggest that's an okay thing to do.
People that harm police officers and destroy federal buildings should go to prison. And it's a damn shame they're out, because nearly 36 of them have actually been arrested for another crime since they were pardoned.
When Peter Alexander confronted Trump about his pardon of the man who tased Officer Fanone in the neck, Trump brushed aside the question.
Among those you pardoned, DJ Rodriguez, he drove a stun gun into the neck of a DC police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything. But I can say this, murderers today are not even charged.
Fanone believes Trump knew exactly what he was doing, rewarding people who committed violence on his behalf.
I know that he knows that it was violent, and I think that that was intentional.
Trump supporters have made the absurd claim that Fanone was a crisis actor and dispute that he really was attacked. Ed Martin called him a fake cop. Martin, who once represented January 6 defendants, is now the DOJ pardons attorney. Fanone says his life and the lives of his loved ones have never been the same.
My mother was the target of swatting events 8 times. She had a credible bomb threat called into her home.
The Justice Department recently took down the press releases announcing charges, convictions, or sentences of January 6 attackers, calling them partisan propaganda and completely erasing the crimes from DOJ history.
This president's use of the pardon system is really undermining the legitimacy of our justice system.
Liz Oyer is a former pardons attorney.
The things that the Justice Department traditionally looks for are acceptance of responsibility, remorse, rehabilitation, a significant track record of good conduct in the community before we would recommend someone for consideration of a presidential pardon.
Few, if any, of the January 6 defendants met that qualification. In fact, a new analysis by the website Lawfare found that at least 97 of the roughly 1,600 people charged in the Capitol attack have been accused of new crimes since January 6, 2021. At least 19 were accused after being pardoned. One of the first rioters to breach police barricades, Christopher Moynihan, pleaded guilty in February in New York to a harassment charge over threats to kill Hakeem Jeffries, the U.S. House Democratic leader. Moynihan was later sentenced to 3 years probation. A man a judge called one of the most violent and aggressive rioters, Zachary Allam, was sentenced in May to 7 years in prison after a jury convicted him of committing a home invasion burglary in Virginia. Andrew Paul Johnson, convicted of illegally entering the Capitol, was pardoned despite having been accused of molesting children. In May, he was sentenced to life in prison for the sex crimes. Fanone's doctors say he suffered a heart attack. He thought he might be killed.
I knew at that point that I was not going to be able to, I wasn't going to be able to fight my way out of this. I wasn't even going to be able to maintain control of my weapon. The only solution here was that people in the crowd helped me. And when I yelled out that I have kids, it worked. It's incredibly dangerous. You have individuals who are inspired by Donald Trump's lies to storm and assault the Capitol and try to prevent the certification of a free and fair election. Donald Trump then absolved them of all of their criminal culpability.
Ken Dilanian, MS Now, Washington.
And joining us now is MS Now Justice Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian. Ken, thank you so much for this important reporting. It's what we've all been wondering about. You know, you pardon these people. Clearly, some of them, you know, that kind of behavior is not their first day as doing something criminal, and it turns out it isn't their last.
Right, and what people need to know is none of these people would have been eligible for a pardon under the normal Justice Department rules that were in place in every other presidential administration. And there would have been FBI background checks had they been considered for pardon, and they would have turned up some of these crimes that they had been charged with since January 6th, but before they were pardoned. Look, you and I have covered some very shocking things that this administration has done with regard to law enforcement and justice, but there is nothing as confounding and as inconsistent with American presidential tradition as what Donald Trump has been doing with the clemency power, about with these fraudsters and swindlers and corrupt politicians. But even among that track record, these pardons of people who assaulted police stand out. I cannot imagine any other president in American history doing anything like this, or even getting away with it, surviving it politically. And yet this is standing as one of Donald Trump's enduring legacies.
They committed their crimes on video. Yeah. I mean, that's not the case with some of these financial fraud criminals who Donald Trump pardons. We watched these people commit the crimes.
One man boasted in court that he was going to be free soon because Donald Trump was going to pardon him, and it happened.
Ken Dilanian, thank you very much. This reporting is so important. Thank you very much for joining us. And coming up, Deb Haaland became the first Native American woman member of a president's cabinet when Joe Biden asked her to be his Secretary of Interior. And now she is running to make history again as the first Native American woman governor in the United States. Deb Haaland will join us next. A member of the Laguna Pueblo, our next guest, Deb Haaland, became the first Native American woman to serve in a president's cabinet when Joe Biden asked her to be his Secretary of the Interior. And now she is running to become the first Native American woman to serve as a governor in the United States. Last week, Secretary Haaland won the Democratic nomination for governor in New Mexico. Secretary Haaland is running against former Rio Rancho Mayor Greg Hull, who won the state's Republican primary. According to the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department, New Mexico has approximately 263,615 Native American citizens, which represent nearly 12.4% of the state's population. In her new memoir, A Voice Like Mine, Haaland recalls the moment she returned to New Mexico after serving as President Biden's Interior Secretary. There was a calamitous chill beyond the unseasonable air. In a few days, Donald Trump would be sworn in for a second term, and the country's fear and worry were palpable. Along with millions of Americans, I had done all I could to elicit a different result. My desire to defend my community and the people of New Mexico grew. I was fired up to defend my beautiful state against the chaos and cruelty of the second Trump administration, so I spoke to friends about my intention to run for governor of New Mexico. Joining us now is Deb Haaland, former Interior Secretary in the Biden administration. She's the Democratic nominee for governor in New Mexico, and her new book is titled A Voice Like Mine. It is available now. Secretary Haaland, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And the statement that I just read seemed to suggest that although you're running for governor, you are running against Donald Trump.
Well, absolutely both are true, Lawrence. Thanks for having me. And yes, governors are the first line of defense against the worst policies coming out of the White House. It's so important that we elect Democratic governors across the country. And you might know that we have a Democratic governor right now in our state, and I'm working really hard to make sure that that this office stays in Democratic hands.
And it's a term-limited state on governors, so it's basically you're running for what's an open office. Now, what is the Trump effect in New Mexico today?
Yes, well, since that horrible bill was passed, people are worried and scared about their Medicaid being cut, their SNAP benefits being cut. I talked to federal workers all over New Mexico, some former federal workers who have been fired from their jobs. But look, we have 23 Indian tribes in New Mexico, 2 national labs, military bases. The federal government has obligations to our state, and people are worried, quite frankly, that they will lose their footing in a chaotic world where gas prices are above $4.50 a gallon, where things are more expensive because of the Trump tariffs. I could go on and on and on.
Today, Donald Trump actually said he loves that gas prices have gone so high in New Mexico and everywhere else. His exact words were, "I love the inflation." Are New Mexico voters going to understand why Donald Trump loves inflation?
No, well, I can tell you that they do not love inflation, and it's really causing some families to not be able to pay their rent and buy groceries in the same month. And that's why I would like to be the governor of New Mexico, so I can, push against this administration, help to make life more affordable for New Mexicans. They deserve that, and that's what I'm working hard to do.
What do you think you would bring to the governorship from your experience as Secretary of Interior?
Absolutely. Well, when I was secretary, of course, I have a record of accomplishment. I managed a department with 70,000 career staff, an $18 billion annual budget. I'm the only one with experience like that who is running for governor, and I want to use that experience and knowledge for the benefit of New Mexico. I was also a congresswoman, so I know how the federal government works, and I'm ready to work for New Mexicans so kids can read sooner, so people can get health care when they need it, so life can be more affordable for every New Mexican, regardless of where they live.
Donald Trump has been threatening in various ways to send some sort of federal troops, possibly federal law enforcement officers, to polling places around the country this year, possibly in the next presidential election. What can be done about that in New Mexico?
Well, I'll tell you, the president was already hounding our Secretary of State for our voter rolls. She told him to go take a hike. I am going to do whatever I can to protect everyone's access to the ballot box. We've worked incredibly hard to make sure that we have opportunities for people to vote. We have same-day voter registration. We have early voting across the state. We take our constitutional right of voting very seriously in New Mexico. That's how I started my political work, was registering voters and getting them to the polls. So I'm going to fight hard to make sure that this access is free and fair, that we have free and fair elections in my state, and I'll do whatever I can to make that happen.
Deb Haaland, Democratic nominee for governor in New Mexico, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you. We will be right back. Deb Haaland gets tonight's last word.